Look, there's more than one reason, but there is a big reason why Georgia is favored to win the national championship heading into this 2024 season. There's a reason why they're going to be ranked number one, why they have the best odds for this and that, why they're going to be the favorites to win the SEC. You go ahead and pick whatever it is you want to pick about that. It's because they have the players. Georgia's got the players. It starts with the recruiting, obviously. Kirby Smart's got to go out there and get those guys, but they've got studs all around, and that shows true when it's time to pick for the NFL draft. And one of ESPN's draft analysts, Matt Miller, he came out with some, early lists, right? Obviously, 2024 draft content is a premium right now in the NFL media world, but the 2025 draft, it's never too early to look ahead. And Georgia's got players that he thinks are at the top 3 at their position heading into this 2025 draft. A year from now, Georgia, he's got several players on this list, including Carson Beck. And look, Beck's a guy that could have been drafted. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But lists like these show what people really think about these rosters and these players. And it tells you why, part of the reason why they win all these games, and 2, they're favored to win all these games. They've got the talent, right? And that's why you see Kirby out on the copter, doing his thing, going to people like Mason Short, right? Guys that aren't necessarily committed to Georgia right now. You get my point. He's going all over, and they're doing what they need to do. And it turns into 15 players drafted, 10 players drafted, possibly 12 this coming season. I apologize for my eye itching. He's got Carson Beck on this list, Trevor Etienne on this list, some offensive linemen on this list, some defensive players on this list. I'm going to get into that in just a second. Ryan Carter from Dawg Post here, talking about the 2025 draft a little bit, but really more so just talking about the talent of the Georgia football team. I mean, my God. It's been super talented, right? Obviously, will they ever create a unit like they did in 21 with the defense, where it was just sick and more than just the starting 11 made it to the NFL, got drafted to the NFL, players behind that, and players that were just freshmen that are weren't true contributors to that defense are also going to be drafted. Guys like Kamari Lassiter, right? A guy that has a chance to be a first-round pick. Maybe if he doesn't become a first-round pick, he'll end up being a second-round pick. But either way, probably a top 50 guy in this coming draft. That's not what this is about, though. The 25 draft. So he's got Carson Beck listed as a top 3 quarterback for 25. Trevor Etienne listed as a top 3 running back. Dylan Fairchild listed as a top 3 interior offensive lineman. Malachi Starks listed as a top safety. He will be the top safety. I'm going to tell you that right now. Nazir Stackhouse listed as one of the top defensive linemen. A couple of honorable mentions, some more offensive linemen, and Tate Ratledge, Ernest Green. Ernest Green obviously plays that left tackle position. Tate Ratledge has been a right guard for the Dogs for the last couple of years, and he's going to do that again. Carson Beck could have been drafted. Tate Ratledge could have been drafted. Nazir Stackhouse could have been drafted, right? Those are 3 guys on that list that would have been drafted in the 2024 draft, electing to return to Georgia for another season, getting more experience, getting more wins, getting more highlight stats, whatever it is they need to do, improving their draft stock. Well, they're being predicted to prove their draft stock a little bit more. Let's go ahead and get some of the, we'll talk about Carson Beck a little bit at the end. I want to run through a couple of these real quick. With Nazir Stackhouse, a guy that had, preseason All-SEC honors, a guy that is following up some major footsteps. He and Warren Brinson together following some major footsteps in the last couple of years behind the Jalen Carters and the Devontae Wyatts and the Jordan Davises and the Trayvon Walkers of the world, working their magic on the defensive line. It's no offense to them. They're just not as talented as those guys, and it turns into them not being as productive and not being as effective. Still viewed as top prospects in the draft, right? We... whether you cover Georgia, whether you're a fan of Georgia or whatever, if you're associated with Georgia, we compare them to the past and what the past was with the last couple of years. First-round defensive lineman, right? And maybe Nazir Stackhouse can play his way into that, but you're seeing it right now with Matt Miller and these draft experts. I mean, Nazir Stackhouse would have been probably a top 4-round pick, maybe a top 3-round pick in this draft. Dylan Fairchild. interior offensive lineman, a guy that's been playing left guard for Georgia. Some injuries allowed him to get on the field a little bit more this season, took advantage of that opportunity, and he's holding off really talented football players like Micah Morris at that position. Holding off guys like Xavier Truss, who plays guard, also plays a little bit of tackle. There's a reason why they want guys in certain spots. Georgia kid, both of these guys, I mentioned Nazir as well, both Georgia kids. So another point of this is these are all different position groups. These are guys all over the field, and it doesn't include guys who did Matt Miller not include on this list that need to be included on this list. Smile London, right, as a linebacker, right? Another guy that should be considered probably a top 3 or 4 linebacker in the 2025 NFL draft. A guy that I think would have been a top 3 round pick in this draft as well. Trevor Etienne, new addition to Georgia. He's going to be, I think, he's going to be starting running back for Georgia. This is the guy that's probably going to get the most touches out of the backfield. He has the most experience out of Georgia's backfield, obviously playing the last 2 years for Florida, racking up around 1,500 yards in those 2 years, a good yard per carry, an efficient runner, a guy that can kind of do it all out of the backfield. Not necessarily someone I view as a superstar, and I don't think they've had a true superstar back since DeAndre Swift. That doesn't mean that the backs that they had weren't capable of being superstars. They just didn't produce like that. Will Trevor Etienne produce like that? Maybe he'll have to, depending on Georgia's running back situation. Either way, viewed as one of the best running backs in the coming draft, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal when you have a guy like that behind you. And maybe Trevor Etienne, according to the scouts, is better than I think he is, which bodes well for Georgia. I'll hit on the sleepers he had real quick in Ernest Green and Tate Ratledge. Guys that are going to get drafted. At the end of the day, they're guys that are going to get drafted. And there are players on this Georgia team that I'm not mentioning that are going to get drafted. These are ones that are just viewed as top prospects at their position by ESPN scouts who, they do a good job sometimes, do a bad job sometimes. The NFL mock draft world, it's a fantasy land job. Give me that job. I'll do that all day. You want me to rank these players and sit here and watch film? It's all I do anyway. So you want to pay me to do that and talk about the NFL draft? I'd love to do that for you, ESPN or NFL.com or whoever it is. There's my pitch to you. Moving on to Carson Beck, because he is a guy that I think if he went through the draft process, goes through the interview process, the combine, all that sort of stuff, had an opportunity to be a later first-round pick in this year's draft. What's the quarterback situation in 2024? Well, it's Caleb Williams, it's Drake May, it's Jaden Daniels, and it's Michael Penix Jr. After that, you get into the J.J. McCarthy's and the Bo Nixes of the world. That Carson Beck, in my opinion, is a better pro prospect than those guys. And if J.J. McCarthy might go in the round 1, then Carson Beck might have went in round 1. You see my point there about Beck? What does he have a chance to do? Well, he probably feels that there's unfinished business at Georgia in terms of finishing a season with the national championship where he was the starting quarterback. I imagine that is a goal of Carson Beck's. I don't think that that's a lofty thing for me to say. He could have played, he could have left. And so now he's going to be able to play his way into securing a first-round draft spot. And not only that, you look ahead at next year's draft, and there's 3 names at the moment, and Beck's one of them, that come to mind as guys that might be top 10 picks as a quarterback. Quinn Ewers and Shedeur Sanders. Quinn, and Shedeur. I think those are probably your 3 best pro prospects at the moment right now in terms of the 25 draft. I've seen Drew Aller thrown out there. Got to see more from him before I think that, but he definitely has talent. Shedeur will definitely be most likely the number 1 dual threat. And then it'll be between Beck and Ewers, I think, that'll fight it out for that number 1 kind of pocket passer type deal. Different types of quarterback, those two. But that's what's leading your Georgia team in 2024. And then there's Malachi Starks. This guy's a bona fide first-round pick. He has been since he was, a sophomore or a junior in high school. I first started watching him. Right, Jefferson's not a far. That's part of the job for us, right? Matt obviously does it the most. I would say at this point, Dean and I probably see about the same amount of kids throughout a fall. Obviously, that's Matt's job. Malachi Starks is a kid I went and watched a handful of times. And I was always super impressed with him as an athlete. He was a guy who I thought could play more than one position in college. He can be on offense if they want to. He could return kicks, I think, if he wanted to. What does Kirby like to do? And what do a lot of great coaches like to do? Put some of the best athletes at defensive back. And that's what Malachi Starks has done. And from the very, second, third, fourth drive of his career, he's shown us, I'm a freak. You remember that Odell type of interception he had? Yeah, that's what Malachi Starks is. He's a ball hawk. He can tackle, right? A guy that probably needs to bulk up just a little bit more, but he's got the speed, he's got the athleticism, and he's a bona fide first-round pick, right? This is a guy that I think will be a good safety in the NFL. And those are just some guys, right? Who are some other studs on Georgia's offense? They're going to have some receivers. I think Dylan Bell is an NFL receiver. I think that some of the transfers they brought in are potential NFL receivers. I think that they've got on defense. He didn't name Mykel Williams, and I didn't see it. At least maybe I just missed that. But if I missed that, Mykel Williams is probably it has an opportunity to be a first round pick. So, maybe I just missed that and I'm missing that. But my point here is not necessarily about Matt Miller's list. My point here is about how stacked Georgia's team is, and that's why they're favored to win these games. And it's NFL talent, right? What LSU in 2019, what was that? A bunch of NFL players. Georgia in 2021, what was that? A bunch of NFL players. Alabama in 2020, what was that? A bunch of NFL players. It wins national championship, guys. It wins national championships. And that's why Georgia's going to have a really good shot to do that next season. Thank you for watching. Link is down below for the newsletter. Sign up for that, please.